Right, hello once again, YouTube. I'm going to put my headset on because you can hear me better. Right, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 2. Right, here we go. Great. Right, hello once again, YouTube. Andy with you. Hope you're all okay today. Got back from Dawlish. Wasn't a great break, to be perfectly honest. It was okay. I've been to better places. Right, so whilst I've been away, there's been a bit of action gone on between myself, David, my mate Dave, Dodgy Dave, as some people like to call him, Wayne Hudson, Mark Anoya, JD Kane, and a few others as well. I just thought I'd give a shout out to David, my friend, because I've met David personally. And I can tell you without any shadow of a doubt that David is an absolute gentleman. He's an absolute gent. So you've got people like, Mark Anoya and Wayne Hudson and JD Kane and others as well, calling Dave out to be this kind of a person. But I can tell you from first-hand experience from me meeting him in person that David is an absolute diamond geezer. He's a gentleman. I had the balls to go down and meet him. I've met several people on the internet before, and it's funny how people change. It's funny how people change when you kind of talk to a person on the comment section on a video or something, or whatever, and it's quite amazing how they then change from being this kind of quite aggressive person to being someone who is then to being quite pleasant and quite nice. David was never aggressive to me because myself and David have gone through very similar experiences, as have lots of other people. And I was fortunate one day to be dropping sort of down towards the south east of England with my job, and I contacted David, said, "Look, Dave, I'm in a bit of a spot at the moment. I've got to pick up very early in the morning at Gatwick the next day. Can I stop at your place because David lives a lot closer to Gatwick than I do?" And he was an absolute gentleman. He said, "Yeah, come on down. My home is your home." That's how good this guy is. And when I got there, I had a huge meal waiting for me. No expense was spared for me. That is a sign of a true friend and a true gentleman. And I've got to come out in defense of my friend David, because you got people who are calling David Dodgy Dave and a liar and disingenuous and all that. Just listen to this a moment. I'm going to screen share a hangout which was done okay, this one here, which was done a week or so ago by Mark Anoya, called Boiled Piss. I haven't got a clue what that's supposed to mean, but it's just a bit of a silly name, really. Right, just bear with me just a moment. Boiled Piss, here we go. Right, I'm going to take my earplugs out so you can actually hear the audio. I'll take my headset off so you can hear the audio. Right, here we go. So this is going to be boiled piss. Just bear with me a moment because I'm still fairly used to this computer. This is not the Mac. This is something different.
Do you believe Because what Andy was saying this, Nick, Dodgy Dave, Dipshit Dave. So and
there you go. You got Dodgy. You got Wayne here saying Dodgy Dave and Dipshit Dave. Now this is coming from someone who's never ever met the person face to face, and the offer is out there. If Wayne wants to come down to Canterbury or Dover to see David, I'm sure David would be delighted to meet you, Wayne or Mark, but not when you're like this, mate. You know, me and David, we basically came on the internet to give people hope, to give people understanding, because we've experienced something which, well, basically you haven't, and we're not aggressive people. We had a message of hope and reconciliation, that, you know, there is something other than what we experience in this life. And we've all lost someone who we've loved. I've lost my father. David has lost his mother and his father. You know, and there is something beyond this life, you know, and we just want to share that. But the skeptics out there, they seem to be very militant, quite aggressive people. They seem to be over the internet, but I think when you're face to face, that probably will not be the case, unless they're really nasty people, of course. But poor Dave, he's gone for a lot in his life. Back in 2004, he was involved in a motorbike crash, and he was saying to me in a conversation earlier today on the phone that he had a choice to make. He could have either ploughed into the back of his friends who are also on bikes and probably taken one of them out, or the other option was to crash into the barrier and then just sideswipe one of his friends' bikes. So Dave did the only thing which he possibly could do, and that was to crash into the barrier and let himself take the full hit rather than his friends. Now, I know, Wayne, that you created a video some months back when we had the bad weather, saying that, you know, if you had a choice between a 40-ton truck or something, or people walking on the side of the road, then you'd probably end up hitting the people on the side of the road. Well, that's the choice which you would make, but my friend David would not. He's prepared to lose his own life and not take other people to spare his own life. That's the sort of person David is. And you're calling him Dodgy Dave and Dipshit Dave?
David was basically saying, David Hickman was saying, do you think Wayne would intentionally run somebody over? Wouldn't answer the question because it would mean going against his mate.
I think he'd intentionally run somebody over, Wayne.
Especially if it was Dave.
I think you'd reverse over them as well.
Well, I mean, my position is a little different.
Just
I have a choice.
Just hang on a second, JD. Anyway, so he says this person is a psychopath, and there's a justification for this man losing his driving license for the things he's said. Right. And there was some other things, and it made some other comments, and it basically it was plain that the guy was desperately trying to find my docs.
Oh yes.
No, I don't think anyone's trying to find your docs or where you live or anything like that, Wayne. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think if we were to find out where you'd live, we'd probably go up there and give you a hug and a kiss, mate. Because that's the sort of people which we are. But I'm not interested in. I know where Mark basically lives. If I'm ever down in the south of England, Dorset way, you know, I could pop in and I could say hello to Mark. But to be honest, he's not my cup of tea. I think you're a nice person, Wayne. I think you're more genuine than Mark. Personally, I think you are a more genuine person than Mark. I think, Wayne, that you are really searching for the truth. If the truth smacked Mark Anoyer in the face, he would basically deny it. But I think with you, Wayne, I think you're more open to that. I think you are genuinely searching for something.
And also, it all goes back to one of Andy Jack's hangouts, and he had his mate Dave on to explain Apparently, Dave went down a disused
wartime bunker.
wartime bunker in Kent, in southeast of England, and went down there with a couple of people, and they took photographs and filmed it. And when they came back, they noticed on the film that there seemed to be what looked like the faces of demons in the walls.
They were just photographic artifacts
and orbs and stuff. So obviously he's now convinced he's had a supernatural experience.
And he's not the only one. There are 5 more people with him. And what's very interesting about this event was that they were with a guide. David did tell me his name. I'm not going to mention the person's name, but he wasn't necessarily he wasn't interested in what David actually saw. He just said, "What did you hear? What did you hear down there?" So not only have you got David and his wife and his son and his pal and another guy as well, you've also got the guide there. They know that stuff goes on in that place, especially on Halloween. There is a very technical term for the name Halloween. I forgot what it was now. Dave will remind me. But if you want to go down there and you want to find out something for yourself, don't dismiss something you haven't even experienced. If you're not prepared to go down and experience that, okay, don't disrespect it. Go down there, and if nothing happens, come back, and then you can say, "I think it's a load of crap." But until you've actually been down there, you cannot disrespect. It's like me saying, "Oh, Spain's a shit place, but I've never been to Spain." You're saying exactly the same thing, Mark and Wayne. You're saying that this is a load of bullshit, but you're not even prepared to go there. Why don't you do yourself a favor? Okay, get yourself down there on Halloween. You and Wayne, or just yourselves, go in there and just stay there for 12 hours, 7 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning. Experience that, and if nothing happens, come out and by all means say it's a load of crap. You'd have more credibility if you did that, rather than just spouting hot air, because that is exactly what you're doing. There's absolutely no oomph behind any of your words.
And not only that, I think he had a damaged leg from a motorcycle accident.
The motorcycle accident happened in 2004. Dave's experience happened in 2009. And they basically gave up on Dave's leg. The doctors could do absolutely nothing. And what did David do? David cursed God. And that's when the healing process started. The bones started to knit together. It was not supposed to happen. He nearly lost his leg. In fact, he should have lost his leg. He should have been amputated. That was in 2004. And this happened in 2009 at the Bastion.
And his father had died. And apparently that all tied in because the doctors couldn't do anything about his leg. But once he, that's right, the bone wasn't knitting properly. But once he'd been down the deep, dark hole and his father's spirit was probably down there.
So this is where you get a little bit nasty, because you're starting to disrespect someone's deceased father. You wouldn't like it if I did that to a member of your family who you lost. This is where the internet really lets itself down. And this is where the atheist community, especially this gentleman here, has no credibility whatsoever. What is he doing talking about a person, of Dave's father, who fought in the war to save people like this and stop, it's just unbelievably sad when you see people disrespecting another person, a person they don't know. That person's gone through a living hell to save people like Mark and Neuer, stopping them from speaking bloody German. And now he's disrespecting him.
For other reasons we don't know. And his leg magically healed afterwards.
And there's giggling in the background now. It's all a big ha-ha fun, isn't it? It's a big game. It's just a big game to you guys. But this is serious stuff. You're dealing with... People get upset and they get hurt when you start to talk about a person deceased. Friend, father, member of the family. This is where this is out of bounds, mate. This is really out of bounds.
Which proved the supernatural connection. And so Wayne and I sort of tried to debunk it a bit and say, well, no, could we talk to him about this in the hangout? And he got very bad.
To produce the originals, the high-def versions, rather than the grainy YouTube.
Basically, he was trying to make the point that there were lots of ghosts in lots of places.
Yeah, and because we didn't believe him, we're now obviously
very sucky.
Yeah.
Well, you ought to go down there and try it for yourself. You need to keep an open mind, but it seems at the moment that your mind is completely clam shut. This is what's so sad about these people, the militant atheist types. They're not looking for truth. They're not looking for truth whatsoever. They're just looking from troll around the internet, looking for victims who they can try and master over. That's what they're trying to do. Try and bully over to make themselves look big and clever and strong and powerful. Something must have happened probably to these people sometime in their youth to cause them, to make them the people that they are now. Good people come on the internet and turn out like this. Good people become nasty, horrible people. That's what the internet does to them. It's all about people's pride. And me and Dave, we come on the internet to try and give people like this hope. And what do? They scoff when they laugh at us. It's not friendly at all. Let's carry on.
Well, I think obviously it wasn't his dad, it was the demons. Because he is both the dark Lord.
He tried to write a book about it. He tried to write a book about his experiences, and apparently the people, the quote unquote, people on the internet, or internet people as he called them, they actually stopped him from writing his book. I don't know whether they hid his pencils or stole his pens.
Channels down.
Dave's channels got flagged by the fundamental Christian types. Should I mention names? I think he's already mentioned them in Hangout anyway. Our mate Thick Shades was one of them. Dresden was another one. Sebastian Dresden, that is, which we debunked Sebastian Dresden about a month or so ago, and no one's heard anything from him. He was one of them. Bill the Panda Man, I don't think he had much. He might have had something to do with it, but I think he's just getting dragged along with Thick Shades and Sebastian. We like Bill. We think Bill's all right. We like the Panda Man. He's a good guy. He's a friend of mine. He's a brother. Not so keen on Thick Shades. Not so keen on G-Man or Sebastian Dresden, because I think they are disingenuous people. But I think with Bill, is the real deal, and so's David, my friend. And I've got to come on here and I've got to defend people which seem to me to be getting a rough end of it. I've met David. I can speak firsthand. You know, I'm a good judge of character, and David to me seems a very genuine person. I believe what he says because I've experienced these things as well. And I don't drink and I don't take drugs and I've got no mental issues or anything like that. And not only have I seen these things, the similar things what David has seen, spirits, demons, not only me, but my brothers have as well, and other people, and my wife. She's seen these things also. Let's carry on for a bit longer.
Yeah.
Stole his crayons.
Yeah. And now here's the other thing, right? Just recently, because he keeps printing stuff on various channels and nuking the channels. Just recently, this Dave was making videos sat in his car, basically jumping on the Thick Shades and Panda Man bandwagon. You know the whole baiting Thick Shades thing, because I don't agree, because they're just fucking nobodies, right? Anybody who gives more than a fucking heartbeat to Thick Shades is a fucking equally wanker, right?
Well, hang on, you've just dissed somebody's entire hobby.
Well, it's just beyond me. Yeah, anyway, so he's making videos about Thick Shades and Panda Man. Right? Last week, he's up the fucking arse. They're big buddies with Thick Shades and Panda Man.
All right, I can tell you now, without any shadow of a doubt, what you're saying there, Wayne, is complete bullshit, mate. Thick Shades and Dave are pretty much arch rivals. If it wasn't for Thick Shades and Dresden, David's book would have gone out would have been printed. David was not going to make a penny from this. All the money which was going to be raised from this book, and it was a book of hope. That's what it was. It was to give people hope. All the money which was going to be raised from this book was going to go towards helping children with cancer. That's what it was about. It was to help children with cancer. Dave is a very giving man. He would really give his bloody right arm if he had to. He'd give his last penny away if he had to. He's that kind of. That's the change which has happened to this man in his life. This is he used to be, and he would tell you this from. If you want to speak to him, you know, you're gonna have to go down. You're gonna have to find him in Canterbury now, because he's not bothered to even talk to you people anymore. I tried to say to him, you know, come on, you know, let's try and sort this out. But he said to me today, if they want to talk to me, Andy, they've got to come down to Canterbury and do it face to face. But I don't think you'll do that. But he would give his last penny away to anyone. That is the kind of person which he is. He used to be quite a violent person years ago, and before his big change, before his revelation. As soon as he had his revelation, that the healing of his leg, what he saw in the Bastion in Dover, it changed a man from being someone on the road to self-destruction to being a person who's trying to help other people, to give them love, hope, and understanding, a bit like myself. And he comes on the internet because he thought that's where I need to be. Get on YouTube and get it out there, get it into the public. Let people know about what's going on. And was it received very well at all? No, it wasn't. And it's very mystifying. When you see people up close, in your face, face to face, in the flesh, they're totally different. As soon as they come on the internet, they're horrible little bastards. You know, good people come on the internet and they turn to horrible people. Carry on.
This guy, Andy Jack's mate. So, when you say you're not convinced, JD, of Andy Jack's descent into creativity, I would say he's a credulous person hanging around with complete fucking idiots.
There you go. There's another one there. Look, you know, it's called my mate Dave a fucking idiot. Wayne, you haven't even met him, mate. Dave was good enough to put me up for a night. He gave me a meal as soon as I got there. We had a great chat. Got me a drink, you know, had a couple of beers. We had a great chat. Had a bite to eat in the morning. Had a cup of tea, and off I went. I mean, is that dodgy? Is that a disingenuous person? Is that a fucking idiot would do that? The reason why you call him a fucking idiot is because he doesn't agree with your worldview. Well, if he agreed with your worldview, Wayne, then he would have to basically disregard all the experiences which he's had. That would be a disingenuous thing to do. You know, we don't do this on purpose. We got no other choice. That's what you got to understand. We are not. How can I explain this without falling into, you know, without not making sense? When you have something like this happen to a person, for me to deny that, I would be disingenuous. For me to carry on the road of being an unbeliever or an atheist or whatever, like you are, that would be a position which I can't take, because that would make me a disingenuous person. And Dave's exactly the same. We can't be like you, Wayne. We want to be your friend, but all we ask for is just to be open-minded. That's it. We just want people to be open-minded. That's it. We've been there. We've experienced this. And now we've come back from there. Now we're giving you our story, thinking that it would be accepted well. But all we get is people taking the piss and calling us liars and dodgy Daves and disingenuous Daves and fucking idiots and things like this. And it's really not on, mate, especially when Mark starts to talk about Dave's deceased father in quite a nasty, horrible way, and that is just out of bounds. And all you do is just mock and laugh. That's what you want to do. You just want to come on here to find people who you can mock and you can laugh, you can try and lord over.
NHS has been wasting billions all this time in healing people. All we needed to do was take them to disused military bases and drop them down a big hole.
See, there you go. It's all about mocking and laughing, you know, and it's sad. It really is quite sad. It's all because we don't agree with your position, your worldview, and we can't. For us to come over to your way of thinking, we would be disingenuous, and we can't be disingenuous liars. It's not going to happen. It's as simple as that.
Just wait for Dodgy Dave's dad to show up. I mean, you're good.
Oh, you've got the best bit yet, right? The best bit yet. He says, right then, what you need to go to the Bastion. If you went to the, if that's what it's called, if you went to the Bastion, you'd realise it was true. I said, I'll go. I said,
go on then, Wayne. Go on then. You said it there that you would go. Now put your money where your mouth is, okay? When you get a bit of time off of work, get on your bike or get in your car or whatever. Like, I'll get the postcode for you, or even tell you from Dave, or even tell you how to get into the place. All right, you said it there. Everyone heard that. You said it. Now, I want you to be a man of your word. If you are indeed a genuine person, which you think you are, I want you to drive from your place. I'll give you the information, the postcode and everything else. And I want you to go there. I want you to spend a night in there, 12 hours, 7 o'clock in the evening till 7 o'clock in the morning. And if nothing happens, then fair enough. Nothing happens. And then you're a genuine person. But until you've done that, sorry, but you're not genuine, mate.
I'm quite a few miles away from there. It's a considerable journey, relatively speaking. Not in American terms, but in British terms it is. So in the middle of the summer, I'll go down there.
There you go. Middle of summer, it'll go down there. So let's say sometime in July. Well, we all look forward to the YouTube video you're going to make of that one then, Wayne. You must let me know when you're going to go down, you know. So we can all keep tabs on you then, just to see whether you do or you don't.
On a bike ride, go down on the old bike, and we'll. I said, Mark will come along and we'll get a couple of tinnies.
Oh, there you go. So Mr. Annoy is going as well. Brilliant. Really looking forward to that video.
In a draw, and I've take the piss in the Bastion.
Well, it'd be great if you both came back Catholics. Like, what the fuck?
No, that is the thing.
There's a burglar just right at your house.
Yeah, wearing sports outfit.
But then Dave says, no, that won't do. You can't go in there laughing and joking, and you must go in there alone, and you must go in there at Halloween.
Yeah. And if we don't, we're cowards.
Oh boy. I mean, I admit I used to believe in ghosts because I had a trusted.
And that's when you want to go in. You want to go in at Halloween if you can. But if you can't, just come down when you can. You know, something might happen, something might not happen. But I think a lot more of you. And I think the YouTube community would think a lot more of you, both of you, if you were to keep to your word. All right, you said it on the Hangout. I've replayed it here. So, you know, for you to be the gentleman which you think you are, then perhaps, you know, you can uphold your oath and your word. Right, so we do look forward to watching the video, the Mark and Wayne video at the Bastion in Dover.
Friend who gave the story and I just couldn't think of a line. It's like, yeah, tentatively I'll take that. Looking back now, that was just, I was being credulous. Thought about like, okay,
everybody has this in their nature. Myself, I'm still fucking scared of a film I saw when I was a kid.
See, that's just it, you see, Wayne. These spirits, these beings, they live off of fear. that's what they live off. They live off of fear. They want you to be fearful. That is what that's the power which they get. Fear generates power, and that is exactly what they're after. I suppose I could go into this a bit more, but I'll be wasting my time, I think, to be honest with you, because I don't suppose you would understand all about that. But they live off of fear, these things, and I've experienced it myself. The more fearful you are, the more excited they get, and the more power they get because of it. And the best time this would be is obviously Halloween. I'll stop there. I mean, I could go on a little bit more about it. My friend David knows a lot more about this than I do, and I was fascinated to listen to him earlier today in a phone conversation we had. But if I was to talk about it, I'll probably do it an injustice. I know a bit about it, but David is really the one who knows a lot more about this kind of subject.
Yeah. I don't like having an uncurtained window at night because the film
That's what gay porn does to you, Wayne.
Because the floating vampire kid scratching at the window.
Say those lot, yeah, that scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Right, so they go into something else now. Just going to wind it forward just a little bit.
Like 16, 17, I couldn't go near drains ever. Like I would.
An episode where
the Exorcist.
All know Wendy's demonic. We all know Wendy's in cahoots with it.
Get me some money to go to outer space. I met an alien named...
Right, okay, so they've basically gone off the subject of Dave, I think. I'm just going to put my earplugs in again. Right, stop sharing. And right, we're back live again now. Right, so I kind of hope that did Dave some justice. But you've got to believe me. I've met Dave. He's a great guy. I've met up with Serious Mind. He's a great guy. I've met up with my friends in Swindon who are on YouTube. They're critics of mine. I love them to bits. I've met other people as well. It's amazing how they change, you know, from being this kind of internet keyboard warrior to when you meet them face to face, there actually changes from that to that. That to that. It's quite incredible to see that. But that's just what the internet does to a person. Right. So I come out in the defense of David. He's a genuine gentleman. He's been hard done by the likes of the militant atheist community. And I've met Dave firsthand, and he is an absolute diamond geezer. Diamond geezer. It's as simple as that. And I wouldn't have any people disrespecting him because he's helped me out. And if you weren't such knuckleheads, he could probably help you out as well. But some people have gone beyond the pale, where he's just basically said, no, sod it, I can't be bothered with them anymore, because all I had was a message of reconciliation, love and hope and peace. A bit like what I got, but it just gets thrown in your face. Anyway, so I know David is watching. He's a mate, he's a friend, and you know, I'm on your side, David. I am on your side, mate. I believe every word which you've told me about your experience, because your experience collaborates with the other people's experience in there, and it also collaborates with my experience, Dave Wise's experience, and other people's experience as well. We can't all be wrong, mate. There is something definitely beyond the physical, definitely out there. Right. Now, that said, I'm leaving that as it is for now, okay? Now we're going to go on to part 2 of this hangout. And this is where I'm going to be debunking, well, with the help of a video, I'm going to be debunking the atheist claims of evolution being actual fact, or as the case may be or may seem. The video now is from a guy who's got a PhD. Again, I'm going to be sharing the screen. I've got to be careful what I'm doing. Right. Right. Right, so this video is from a guy with a PhD, guy called John Morris. All right, and I want you to listen to this. Now, here's a guy who knows about the fossil record. He's done his own research. He's a very learned man in this subject. He's written quite a few books on different subjects concerning paleontology, Noah's Ark, the flood, the fossil record, and all this kind of thing. I want you to listen to this, and I'm going to be stopping on it. I'm going to be commentating on parts of it, and I just want you to understand what he's trying to say. Right, just make sure I've got my hangout up and going still. Right, okay. All right, so that's working fine. Right, so here we go.
I've been really concerned, as we all have, with these polls that have been taken of kids from Christian homes. They go off to college, and the great majority of them leave the faith.
I'm just going to stop it there just for a moment. Now, if you're a genuine person looking at science in a genuine way, and you're not swayed one way or the other way, but I know you're going to be swayed the way you're thinking at the moment if you're an atheist. You're thinking that evolution is true. God does not exist. Well, there's certain questions you've got to ask yourself. You know, how did the universe get here? The universe cannot make itself. That's what the laws of thermodynamics are telling you, the first law specifically. Energy matter cannot create itself. The universe cannot create itself. There's no natural mechanism within the universe to create itself. Therefore, we're looking for something supernatural. All right. So the default position is God exists. That is it. God exists. Look around you. Everything you see, it's been created. Your house you live in right now, the computer screen you're looking at, everything we have in the world has been created by something. It has an origin. It's a creation. It's exactly the same as planet Earth and the universe itself. It has an origin, and God is the orator of He is the origin. He is the creator. It's as simple as that. And therefore, if God can create that, then He can create us and everything else on the planet. Because as it stands right now, and we've tried to crack this nut, how did life get started? Life cannot come from non-life. It has to have a creator. They used to think that amino acids were the building blocks of life. Left-handed amino acids, right-handed amino acids, but they don't have the ability to create themselves into a polypeptide. Okay, you know, so it has to be from an extrinsic point of view. It's as simple as that. And you know, the atheists think that evolution is true. Well, if evolution is true, then what this man's going to say is absolutely false. So I want you to try and keep an open mind if you can. I know it's very difficult for you to do that, but if you can keep an open mind, you will see that there is a much better way than the atheist way.
And a lot of them, I don't know, great majority, but many of them, you know, they're confronted with evidences that they don't know what to do with, that they've not been well taught at home and in the church, and you know, they're just ripe for picking. And I would like to stem those losses and to minimize those losses, and that's why I wrote this book. The fossil record should not be one of the reasons why a Christian young person leaves the faith. It really shouldn't be that way. And so I wrote this book particularly for this hypothetical young sophomore from a Christian home that goes to college and gets hammered with the freshman level fossil course and is taught that the Bible is wrong and that there is no such thing as, I mean, Christianity is false. And I'm concerned about that kind of Christian student. is there a way to salvage that person, to graduate them from college with their faith still intact? And that's really the purpose of this book. While I was doing that, I learned so much about the fossil record. I had no clue. And we'll talk about some of that tonight. I want to show you that the fossil record, in fact, I've grown up at ICR, I mean, I've been a colleague of Dwayne Gish. I mean, his office was next door, and we'd go to lunch every day, you know, and he's always talking about there are no transitional forms. And he beats that drum, and his book, Evolution of the Fossils, say no. And it's the titles that came after that. That was the drum he beat, and he beat it so well that there are no transitional forms between the major categories of fossils. And that's kind of what I thought about the fossils. But the more I started looking at the fossils, and the fossils message is not just a negative message. There's a real positive statement that creationists can latch onto with these fossils. And the fossil record is not just to avoid the loss. Hey, we win with the fossil record. We win. Let's win. Let's win. Let's win. Let's take this and win with it. If you don't mind, I'm going to sit down. You know, when I was in, I guess, grade school, I was taught that evolution is true. And one of the reasons we know evolution is true is because as humans, we evolved from four-legged creatures, and now that we're standing up on two legs, that we have back troubles. And everybody has back trouble. Anybody here have back trouble? Come on, everybody raise your hand. Yes, we do have back troubles. I have terrible back trouble. So I'm sitting on a stool, whether you like it or not. I'm sitting on a stool, and actually, back trouble has nothing to do with evolution. If you lift a piano and hurt your back, it has nothing to do with evolution. It's just a life of poor posture and lifting wrong, and that's where the back trouble. By the way, did you know that four-legged animals have more balance? So that obviously cannot be a solid argument. It's just one of those propaganda pieces that evolution has, and we can put that one to rest. But let's talk about the fossil record. It's not just a problem for evolution. It's a good proof of creation. I did write this fossil record. There's a problem with this book. It's got a lot of pictures inside that are absolutely gorgeous. Just gorgeous pictures. And I was talking to Lloyd Anderson a while ago. He's about the first person I've met that is reading through the book. Everybody else, they buy the book and look at pictures. It's just a beautiful book. But actually, I wrote the book and put the captions on the pictures so that if that's what you're doing is you can look through the pictures and you read the captions, you get the point of the book. Anyway, it was a fun book. I learned a lot. And by the way, in the introduction to the book, it tells how to get PowerPoint slides of all the pictures in the book plus others that you could get that PowerPoint talk. It's on the web from ICR, and then you could give your own PowerPoint talk on fossils, and it'll be similar to what I'm doing here tonight. But so it's in the book. In fact, there's a whole stack of them over here. I don't know if ICR sent those or if those are from the local group. But anyway, there's a bunch of fossil record books. Let's remind ourselves about evolution. Evolution is this idea of descent from a common ancestor, that all of life goes back to a common ancestor. That some 3 to 4 billion years ago, non-living chemicals just got together and made a cell. A living cell that could survive and assimilate its food and reproduce. And in the process of reproduction, through mistakes in that reproduction process, through mutations, this thing has descended into the vast array of plants and animals that we see alive today. And in the
nobody knows how that thing, it was a eukaryotic microorganism, or an amoeba, or some other people call it a different name. Nobody even knows how that came about. They have no idea how that thing there actually came into existence. Not a clue, nothing, zilch. And they call it science. And they call it, this is like one of the most absolute proofs of science is in evolution. And they don't even know how that thing there actually came to be.
The fossil record. This kind of thing evolved into marine invertebrates, which evolved into fish, which evolved into amphibians, which evolved into reptiles, which evolved into mammals, some of which evolved into man. All of life goes back to a common ancestor. Another way to express the evolution idea is this geologic column, the geologic time scale. The idea behind this is a column of fossils, but it's really a column of time. And the idea is that this evolved from non-life, and this evolved into that, and into that, and into that, and over time, you keep on going up and finally get to man. And well, if you start up here at the top, that's where recent fossils are, but you go down, you finally get into the dinosaurs, and before the dinosaurs, it's a column of time. As you'll see in the book, the fossil record does not look like this at all. This is not even hinted at by the real fossil record. This is presented in the textbooks as if it were a presentation of fossils. It is a lie. The fossils look very, very, very different from this. The fossil record looks like a record of a huge worldwide flood that did this. And
if anyone understands how coal is formed or fossils are formed, just say, for instance, that for a fossil to be formed, it cannot be hanging around for thousands and thousands of years waiting to be buried by the next rock layer. What would happen to that particular animal? It would get eaten. The bones would get worn away. They would get pounded into dust. They get eaten by other wild animals. There would be no remnants whatsoever of any fossils if that was the case. Now, there's certain criteria that has to happen for a fossil to become fossilized. And we dig it up today and we can see what it is pretty much. It has to be buried rapidly. It has to be kept out of sunlight. It has to be kept away from predators. And also it has to be kept out of oxygen, because oxygen oxidates things and it basically wears things down. So it has to be buried rapidly. Only a flood could do this. And we find fossils all over the world. This is a reason that there probably was, it's good evidence that there was at some point on planet Earth a worldwide flood.
We win on that one too, but they just don't know it yet. They just don't know it. But the fossil record looks very different. Evolution, I'm convinced, is more of an idea about who we are than where we came from. We are animals, evolved from the animals. In fact, here's a textbook in use out, I think, in California. Little Johnny, you are an animal, and you share a common heritage with earthworms. This is evolution with a vengeance. I gotta ask you, does this kind of information do little Johnny any good? This is devastating stuff. Here's another one.
There's absolutely no hope in that whatsoever. You're born, you live your life, you get what you can. As long as it makes you feel good, mind you, perhaps have a few kids, and then you die, and then that's it. Probably die a very long, slow, painful death. Or if you're lucky, you get run over by Wayne Hudson, if you're on a pavement somewhere dodging a 40-ton truck. So it's a pretty hopeless ideology, is evolution. And in actual fact, when you really look at it, when you really study evolution, what atheists believe, there is absolutely no evidence for it whatsoever.
Your inner fish. We belong to a highly specialized group of bony fishes. We are fishes, whether we like it or not. Yeah. When we checked in the motel a while ago, the girl was there. She said, "Oh, Institute for Creation, what's that?" I said, "Well, that's creation versus evolution." I said, "We're a Christian group that we do creation instead of evolution. We think the scientific evidence supports creation more than evolution." And I'm teaching at the seminar, and we're going to be teaching that you did not come from a fish. Now, I've used that kind of line on hundreds of people, you know, sitting next to me in the airport, and, you know, that's kind of how I start the witnessing process. We don't think you came from a fish. And in almost every case, they all say, "Oh, I never believed that."
The reason why they don't believe it is because it's absolutely hideous. It's so laughable that it's unbelievable. And they call it science. There's absolutely no evidence for humans coming from fish. Not at all. And they call it science. It's an absolute joke.
Nobody believes they came from a fish. But everybody is taught that. It's interesting. The creation model is quite different. The creation model is, well, there's a lot of variety, but
this is where it gets interesting, people. This is where we have hope. If we haven't got hope in this life, then honestly, it's everyone needs hope. We are all suffering down here. This is what we've got to understand. Planet Earth, on the whole of it, is not a nice place. If you're in North Africa, if you're in Europe, if you're in England, you are very, very fortunate. But most of the world is in a place of absolute desperate poverty, and it's getting worse. And we need to give these people hope and the truth. And we have hope and the truth. It's in God. It's in Christ. It's in creationism. It's certainly not in atheism whatsoever.
Dogs is dogs, and dogs is not cats. And there's variety among the dogs and variety among the cats, but the basic idea behind creation is, well, it's two main points. If you're taking notes, these 2 points. Sudden appearance, that, well, as you come up that fossil record, as you come up that geologic time scale, well, say with dogs, there's a lot down here, there was no dogs. And then suddenly there are dogs, and lots of dogs. And they're dogs at the start. They suddenly appear. There's no clue that dogs evolved from something else. Once dogs got here, they did a lot of variety and variation, but dogs is dogs, and that's it. And dogs vary, but variety is not evolution. Adaptation is not evolution. Sudden appearance. This is the basic definition of the creation model.
Well, this is where it gets a bit interesting now. Okay, now this is facts. We're going to talk about the fossils, how they've not changed in so-called millions of years. Now, you've got to pay attention to this a little bit. This is crucial.
Sudden appearance and stasis. Once a particular type got here, it stayed that way. It was stationary. It was static. They stayed dogs. Cats stayed cats. Stasis. They may have varied somewhat, but still within the category of dogs. So sudden appearance and stasis, that's basically the definition of the creation model. Many varieties can come from a single kind, but one kind never becomes a different kind, as evolution requires. Variety, yes. Evolution, no. I think it's frustrating sometimes for non-scientists to see that there is this body of data out there, and these scientists attack the data, and yet they interpret it differently. They tell different stories about its past. You can't tell a different story about its present because it's right there, same thing. Both sides sees the same thing. I mean, the data are the data. But yet there are at least 2 different interpretations of the data when we're talking about origins. And it's frustrating. Where do these different interpretations come from? Different stories about their history. Well, I think the most important part about the decision-making process is the assumptions that go into it. If a person begins the study of the data with an assumption set that is basically naturalistic, that there is no supernatural. And if that's your religious bias, then you can look at the data and tell an evolutionary story about it. You can do that. That's what most people do in the school systems. I'm not convinced that most scientists believe in evolution. I think it's about 50-50 in my book. Let's say 50% of scientists believe in evolution, but certainly 99% of university professors believe in evolution. But if you start with that religious perspective, you can tell an evolutionary story about the data. But if you start from this perspective, that the biblical model is true, that creation, fall, flood really happened, they're really facts of history and affected the world, then you can look at the data and tell a creationist story about it. Since science has to do with observation, that's what scientists do, is make these observations. We can't go back in time and observe either creation or evolution. They're neither one of them happening now. And what's happening now is just adaptation, mutations happening now, but that's not evolution. It's not creation. It's stasis is what we see now. But I can't prove to you scientifically that the creation model is true. I can't prove to you that the evolution model is false, although I clearly believe it is false and this one is true. What I can say, and what I do say, is that this way of thinking is so far superior to this way of thinking. It fits the science better, it fits the evidence better, it's more intuitively correct, it shoots itself in the foot less. The creation way of thinking and the creation interpretation is the one that works better than the other, as long as we're not appealing to the authority of Scripture, which is kind of not proper in the scientific sense. But you know where I'm going. Between Christians, we can make that assertion. Scripture does say it over here, and so I believe it. But look how well it works. In fact, that's kind of the way we do at ICR. We don't try to prove the Bible. The Bible doesn't need our help. The Bible is just flat true. It just needs to be believed and obeyed. But if it is right, it's got to work. And let me show you how well it does work. When we go to the scientific evidence, let me show you how well it works. And that's how we'll talk tonight. The geologic column, I mean, this is God to the secular mind. I mean, this is really important. I wonder, is there another interpretation of the fossils as they really are? Could it be that this array of fossils, such that it is, I mean, this is not a correct array, but the array that it is there a different interpretation? Could it be due to the great flood of Noah's day? All these fossils are in sedimentary rock, sediments laid down by moving water. And I suspect, it has to do with the flood. Let's test that a little bit. If the flood happened the way the Bible says it happened, if we just let the Bible do its own talking, if the Bible is our authority, then that flood was worldwide. And it covered the mountains. And it would have restructured the Earth's entire surface. And if that kind of flood really happened, it would have deposited most of the world's fossil-bearing rock, fossil-bearing sedimentary rock. If the flood did happen the way the Bible says it happened, it laid down the rocks and fossils. But if the flood made the fossils, there were no geologic ages. The flood is the real key. I mean, the flood is the key. That's why that groundbreaking book, The Genesis Flood, was so world-changing. When it came out and just demonstrated that the flood can be understood and defended, and man, it just had a tremendous impact. Because, well, the flood is just the real key. Well, in thinking about these two ways of thinking about history, the fossils are a good test case. Because the fossils have that water-related stuff, and it has the history-related stuff. And the way evolutionists think about the fossils is that the fossils are the remains of animals which evolved by natural processes like natural selection and were buried in watery sediments over great ages.
And they can't explain where the natural process actually came from.
Now, is that not the way the evolutionists think about this? Well, the creationists have the same fossils. We have exactly the same fossils. But we think about them a little differently. We think of the fossils as the remains of animals. I mean, we're trying to be parallel here. The fossils are the remains of animals that were created by God. And were
because there is no other way, basically. Life cannot arise from non-life. And when you look into the cell itself, single replicating cell, you will see that it's very well organized. You've got to ask yourself, where did that organization come from? Where did that intelligence come from? It's not intrinsic, it's extrinsic. It comes from outside. It's a bit like energy and matter. It cannot make itself. Life cannot make itself. A computer cannot make itself, although it's not a biological system. But life cannot arise by non-life. And I know it's abiogenesis. This is not evolution. I understand that. But to get evolution, so say evolution, first of all, you've got to get life. And you haven't even worked that one out. And going back again beyond that, going back to energy and matter, you haven't even worked out where that's came from. But all of a sudden, you've got this end product, which is evolution, which somehow ticks all your boxes. And even that, when really scrutinized properly, being honest, does it even work? Evolution does it. And this gentleman's going to show you some fossils in a minute, which are exactly the same as today. Not just one or two, loads of them, which have been no change at all over supposed millions and millions of years. How can that be? Where are the transitional fossils from one thing to another? It seems like all the phyla all of a sudden came in all at once. Now, that is not evolution. That would have to be creation. Let's carry on.
Buried rapidly in watery sediments by the great flood of Noah's day. We just have a different story that we tell about the fossils. Neither side saw the fossils laid down. We're trying to reconstruct history here, and the Christian has the Bible as the guide. We have the lab book of one who saw history and did it himself, and he told us about it. And
to be fair, that is a faith issue. Reading the Bible is a faith issue. There's no evidence at all. We cannot point to the exact time this kind of happened, or we can't point to God causing the flood. This is by faith and faith alone. But we can use science to try and prove that our faith is alive.
The fossils can be a good test case. The fossils. Speaking of those fossils, evolution says that each type, if all things came from a common ancestor, then
which has never been found, by the way. There should be millions of them.
Each type descended through ancestral types, through transitional forms, these in-between forms between a fish and an amphibian. There should be a lot of transitional forms, and these transitional forms should be represented by the fossils. Well, the creationists would say differently. Well, to draw it here, I mean, if a fish became an amphibian, there ought to be some fish that kind of becomes more amphibian-like and more amphibian-like until it's finally able to walk on four legs. And as we come up the strata, there ought to be this transition, these transitional forms. Well, this is a picture of the most amphibian-like fish, and that's the most fish-like amphibian. But these transitional forms are hypothetical. They just don't exist. They're just not there. creationist says that each type, fish and amphibians, and each type was created separately and fully formed without the transitional forms. These transitional forms never existed and should not be found as fossils. The fact is we don't find them as fossils. Evolutionists have to tap dance around that, but the fact is we don't find these transitional forms as fossils. And that's what the creationist predicts, because we say they never existed. Evolution says they did exist, they just didn't get preserved.
That's a joke, isn't it?
Stephen Jay Gould, who until he died a few years ago was really the leading evolutionary spokesperson. He's a Harvard professor, Harvard paleontologist, a real brand name evolutionist. But he was a good scientist. I love to read his science articles. I'm sorry that he's gone because he wrote such good stuff. He was a good scientist, but he admitted he's a thoroughgoing atheist, thoroughgoing evolutionist, thoroughgoing anti-Christian, anti-creationist. He was not a nice man, but he was a good scientist. And he admitted that the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persist as the trade secret of paleontology, or the study of the fossils. The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches, and the rest is inference, however reasonable, but it's not the evidence of the fossils. He admits that these transitional forms are non-existent.
Whoops. Everyone in there. Oops, something happened there. Hang on a minute. What the heck happened there? Hang on a minute, people. I've got to go back.
My experience, my evaluation of the evidence is that is.
Hi, my name is Stuart, and thanks for coming through to check out this video, where I'm actually coming to you from a pedalo.
You're the study of the fossils.
Right, so that's what I want to get to. Right, this is what Stephen Jay Gould said. He said that there is no transitional form, so why do you believe that there are? That's the question I want someone to answer. There aren't any transitional forms, so if there's no transitional forms in the fossils, and therefore evolution is not going to happen. And this is like Stephen Jay Gould, a huge paleontologist, one of your gods, if you like, one of the gods of evolution. And even he's saying that there is no transitional forms, but still you think it is. So perhaps those people on YouTube are more qualified than Stephen Jay Gould ever was. Ask yourself that question.
The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches, and the rest is inference, however reasonable, but it's not the evidence of the fossils. He admits that these transitional forms are non-existent. If evolutionists, this is the evolutionary tree. In fact, what's his name? I'm going to give a talk here tomorrow on Darwin's Tree of Life. Paul Nelson. Yeah, he's going to give a talk on the Darwin's Tree of Life, how it doesn't exist. This is the tree as it should exist if evolution were true. According to Stephen Jay Gould, this is the way it does exist. Just little data out at the tips and nodes of the branches. And these branches aren't connected.
There you go. The one on the right-hand side, people, is what we actually probably see. There's no transitional forms in between whatsoever. So if there's no transitional forms, then basically evolution doesn't happen.
Well, my evolutionary colleagues, they say, Morris, there's no evidence for evolution. I say, for crying in the bucket, what kind of evidence are you looking for? Just look at the fossils. Data at the tips and nodes of the branches. Stephen Jay Gould keeps going. He goes on to say, the history of most fossil species includes two features which are particularly inconsistent with gradualism or gradual evolution. The first feature is stasis. The second is sudden appearance. Have you ever heard those two words before? That's the definition of creation. Guys, this is a wonderful time to be a Bible-believing Christian and a creationist. I mean, the evidence is so strong in our favor. There's just no room for Christians to doubt anymore. I mean, it's just overwhelming. Stasis and sudden appearance. Stephen Gould's partner in the whole concept of punctuated equilibrium. He says the known fossil record fails to document a single example. Fails on a single example. That means less than one. Well, how many is less than one? That's 0. And that's what we're working with here. The fossil record, the known fossil record is 0 transitional forms of basic body style evolution, of changing body styles, and hence offers no evidence that the gradual evolution can be valid. So he proposes then punctuated evolution, that it went so rapidly that it left no fossils. Well, the fossil record fails to document evolutionary change. You just don't see it. But if the fossil record doesn't document evolutionary change, what does it document? What are the fossils trying to tell us? Okay? Let's see if we can discern a positive message from the fossils. Well, one is stasis. Stasis, what's that? What's that fossil? It's a clam. What does it look like? It looks like a clam. If this is a 100-million-year-old clam, why does it look so much like today's clams? I mean, it looks like a clam. There's lots of clams in the fossil record. They look like clams. There's some clams with variety, but they're clams. Where is the evolution? The fossils exhibit stasis. Things stay the same. They're static or stationary. They don't undergo evolutionary change. Well, that fossil is a fossil of a crocodile. They say it's 200 million years old. But what does it look like? It looks like a crocodile. It's recognizably a crocodile. Where is the evidence of change? Oh, there's a paddlefish. It looks just like the paddlefish that paddle around the Great Lakes today. The fossils show abrupt appearance. There's no paddlefish down here, and finally there's paddlefish, and they're paddlefish, and they vary, and they're paddlefish. And they go all the way up into the present. There's paddlefish today. Abrupt appearance. They say this fossil is 300 million years old, but it looks just like today's paddlefish. There's no evidence of any basic kind changing into another basic kind. You see kinds, and you see them stay the same, but that's not evolution. Fish look just like fish.
I think what's happened is that I think God created lots and lots of different varieties of different animals. Some animals we haven't got today due to extinction, and I think there were lots more of different varieties of, as I say, different animals. But we are now kind of digging them up, and we are kind of thinking that they're transitional forms, perhaps from one thing to another. That's what they're interpreting them as. But I think this is not the case, because we know that over the past, a few hundred years, we have lost quite a number of different species, due to extinction. And I think that's what it is. People are digging them up and thinking, well, evolution is probably true, and therefore here's one species which looks dissimilar to this one here, so therefore it's a transitional fossil. But in actual fact, it was probably created whole and complete, and lots more of them. And over time, we've lost lots of species.
There's a catfish. You ever been catfishing? There's a modern catfish. There's a fossil catfish, and they look the same. There's a stingray. Looks like a modern stingray. Where's the evolution? I mean, we could do this forever, and I'm going to do it until you're tired of it. There's a squid. There's a squid. There's another fossil squid. Looks just like a modern squid. I mean, squid, there's a lot of squids in it. Well, what's that? Yeah. It's a lobster. What's that? Looks just like a modern dragonfly.
There you go. Dragonfly. 300 million years old, supposedly. Hasn't changed much really in 300 million years, has it? You'd have thought it would have evolved some more. Or perhaps it did evolve into something else and it devolved back into itself again. You got to abandon this, people. This evolution thing. It's bankrupt. It's old. It's outdated. It simply doesn't work. You know, you are really flogging a dead horse, trying to get blood out of a stone. It's just completely dead. It just don't work.
Flying around in your garden. In 300 million years, there hadn't been any change at all. Where is the evidence for evolution? It's not in the fossils. The fossil evidence is for stasis. Got it? Who's that? That's a cockroach. For crying out loud, cockroaches haven't changed in 250 million years. Ooh. There's a beetle. 50 million years. I mean, it's just all kinds of things. There's a stink bug. It hadn't changed. There's a frog. There's another frog, a fossil frog. And it looks like a frog. Surprise, surprise, it looks like a frog. There's a snake fossil. Looks like a snake. By the way, what kind of animal evolved into a snake if you're an evolutionist? I mean, there's a big change between a snake and everything else. There ought to be some transitional form somewhere, don't you think? They say that lizards crawling around on the ground lost their legs and became snakes. Well, they can say it. But is it so? As Stephen Gould used to chastise his fellow evolutionists because he says they're telling just so stories. Remember the just so stories? Rudyard Kipling wrote a whole bunch of just so stories. He says how the elephant got its trunk. He said he told the story about some animal was down by the stream and an alligator jumped out and grabbed his nose and pulled and pulled and he pulled and he pulled and he got a big long nose and that's how the elephant got its trunk. And it happened just so, dearly beloved. That's the just so story. They can tell stories, but where's the evidence? Or as the commercial goes, where's the beef? What non-snake became a snake? There's another snake. Here's a turtle. It seems to me to take snakes and turtles could be an excellent test case for evolution, because if evolution is true, then snakes and turtles, they each evolved from something else. But the question, what non-snake evolved into a snake? The same question, what non-turtle evolved into a turtle? I mean, it's just different. It's different. They say, well, the ribs just got thicker and thicker and thicker and finally fused together. Well, they can say it. But where's the evidence? Where are the transitional forms? We see a lot of turtles in the fossil record. They fossilize well, obviously. And every time we find a turtle fossil, you know what it is? It's a turtle. Surprise, surprise. There's a bat. It's the oldest known bat fossil, so they say. And it's a bat. It's a bat. Now, the fossils do show variety. This is an ammonite fossil. This is a very common type of fossil. And there's a lot of ammonites. There's just a lot of variety among ammonites. But they're either ammonites or they're not ammonites. What non-ammonite became an ammonite? See what this? I mean, some of them have kind of a coiled shell, and some of them have a. There's some still alive today. This is the chambered nautilus. And there's really not much change to amount to anything. Evolutionists point to certain changes. Well, I can go with that. I mean, change happens, but change is not evolution. In fact, I look out at you people and I see some change among you. But that's not evolution. You're all people. Got it? Change happens, but that's not evolution. Some are big, some are small. Some have a smooth shell, some have a ribbed shell. You know, evolutionists make a big deal about smooth and ribbed shells on ammonites. See, that proves evolution. No, it doesn't. It proves variety. This is not much different from brown hair and blonde hair. I mean, it's just not much different from that. There's that clam I showed you a while ago. Looks like a modern clam. You ever eaten a raw clam? I was over in Korea one time and they gave me some to eat. It's a high insult to refuse. I don't care. I refused. I mean, there's a cricket. There's a scorpion. There's a housefly just laid her eggs. I mean, these are just like the modern organisms. I told you I was going to make you sick of looking at these things. There's a lizard. Looks just like a lizard. These are in amber. It's the same with plants. There is variety. Yes, there is variety, but recognizably you can place them in modern groupings. There's a centipede. Ooh. There's a spider. There's a termite. Here's another thing about, there's my clam. Texas is clams. Texas is a real clam factory. There's just a lot of clams down in Texas. There's a lot of clams. I found this clam in Central Texas there, and there's a big, it's an outcrop of you can just pick clams out of the wall until your arms get tired. I mean, just lots of clams. And notice that this clam, the two halves of the clam are still together. When a clam is living, it can burrow, it can do open and shut, and there's a muscle that holds the two sides together. And clams can do a lot of stuff. He can burrow down in the sand, and he can do a lot of stuff. But when you disturb the clam, or the clam thinks is in danger, it snaps shut. It clams up. I mean, that's where we get this clam is all clammed up. He's protecting himself with his hard outer shell. And this clam and the millions of other clams in this outcrop, they're all clammed up. Something is endangering them. And if you bury a clam suddenly in sediments, it'll just burrow right out. It can tell which way's up and it just burrows out. But these clams were all buried in there together so tightly they couldn't even burrow out. It's just like a stack of marbles in there. And clams don't live that way. This is not a life assemblage in there. It is a burial and death assemblage. I think this clam was buried alive. It was buried still in this protection mode. Once a clam dies, then the muscle relaxes and it opens up and the birds eat the insides. I mean, that's the way it happens. But these clams all were buried alive and still in that burial mode. as we find them. Now they're dead, obviously now, but they were buried alive, fossilized in that position. Lots of interesting fossils. Here's a rapid fossilization. This is a fish fossil in the process of eating another fish. Now, how long does it take for a fish to swallow lunch? I mean, this guy was buried so rapidly by something so catastrophic where his sediments were just dumped in on this fish in the process of swallowing that he didn't even finish swallowing, and they both fossilized down in there. Now, most fish are not fossilized in the process of eating another fish, but there's quite a few fossils have been found like this. There's another one. I mean, there's just a lot of them. They're not the majority of them, but there's a good number of them. Caught in life episodes. I mean, they're living and buried now, and were buried so deeply they couldn't even flip and wiggle out. And they died right there. I think it's the flood. I think it was the flood. And the flood, 8 volumes of sediments, and just boom, and there it is. And these things are trapped. They're suffocated, and they're trapped, and they can't even get out. I think that's the evidence that we're seeing. I can't imagine what else evidence we're looking at. These fossil fish, even if they're not eating another one, they're all just so precisely preserved. I mean, it's just little tiny bones, and I found them. You smell them, and they smell like a dead fish. I mean, it's just right there. Here's a marine reptile in the process of giving birth. Here's the baby reptile exiting the birth canal. I mean, how long does that take? Well, it does take some time, I guess. But this creature is strong enough to swim anywhere. How did it get trapped this way? The only way I can imagine is just a dump of sediments on top of it, and it's just trapped and buried, and there it is, and now we find it. Just a dump of sediments. That's the flood. That's what the flood would do. Got it? Oh, the fossils show mass mortality, just huge clumps of these fossils all piled together. From trilobites to little baby dinosaurs there. I mean, they're just buried in mass. Of course, fish are sometimes fossilized by the trillions. There's the mussels. I mean, it's just, the country of Morocco is just one whole big fossil bed. These are all ammonites. Some are coiled, some are straight. But they're all ammonites. They're the same kind of creature. They're like a squid with a shell. And these things, by the way, notice that these pointed ones have a favored orientation. They're all kind of pointing upwards, indicating that there's moving fluid, moving sediments around them and orienting them in relation to the direction of current. This is the country of Morocco. Something watery, something just with dump of sediment, something moving in a preferred direction. Something, I think we're talking about Noah's flood. And the evidence is for a flood that fits the description as given in Scripture. Of course, we know about dinosaur fossils. This is Dinosaur National Monument in Colorado, Utah. Just a whole mountainside of dinosaur fossils. Oh, man. And these dinosaur fossils, most of them are just ripped apart. And a lot of the bones are broken. They're a piece of one bone. And from, one bone for dinosaurs, a few dinosaurs are rather complete, but most of them are just dismembered. Evolutionists say, well, this was a stream at flood stage. But the map of the Morrison Formation, which this is, covers several states. I mean, what kind of stream are we talking about here? What a wonderful time to be a Bible-believing Christian. The fossils, bottom line, the fossils show catastrophic deposition. In fact, here's an interesting one. This was a paper published a couple of years ago by a scientist out in California. He noticed that some of these dinosaur fossils, whenever they're found with their neck arched back. And he said this is typical of asphyxiation. This thing strangled. It died. It was buried alive. Now he's a rather rabid animal, and he certainly wasn't trying to promote Noah's flood. If he knows now that I'm using his stuff to promote Noah's flood, he'll probably come shoot me. But no, I take that back. Don't put that on the tape. But he would not be happy. But Struthiomimus, that was found about 100 or more than 100 years ago. It's a wonderful fossil. It was fairly complete. Usually dinosaur fossils, when they're found, they're just pieces. They're just a piece of one bone or just one or two bones. But to find the whole carcass there is really quite rare. But whenever you do find the carcass there, it almost always is gasping for air. I don't know how to explain this. In fact, I'm not sure I know how to understand it. But if, say that you suddenly were hanging in a tree and dropped out of the tree, and you landed in a quicksand pit, and you're stuck there and up to your knees, you can't move, and you're sinking, and now you're up to your hips, and you can't move anything, and you're struggling, and you can't really struggle. You can't move a thing, and then it's coming up and up, and finally it's you're gasping for air, and try to do that kind of thing. You're reaching back trying to gasp for air. That's what I think this is going on. Now, I don't think Struthiomimus fell in a quicksand pit. I think he's standing there and the sediments are falling around him, but it has the same effect of just being buried up and rapidly up, and now he's gasping for air, and he's struggling, and he can't even move anymore, and I think that's what we're seeing. But a lot of the dinosaur fossils are like this. Here's actually, we have this fossil on the wall at ICR. If you're ever down there, come visit us. This is a really nice fossil. This is a fossil of a dinosaur. Fish, a sturgeon-like fish. I don't know what a dinosaur is doing next to a sturgeon. They're buried together. They didn't live together, but they're buried together. But even that sturgeon, when a fish dies, it just looks like a dead fish. It looks like a dead sock sitting there. But when a fish is alive, it's twisting and twisting, and this is twisting and flipping and just got trapped in a flip position. This is not an easy death for that sturgeon, and the dinosaur, he's reaching back for air himself. This is a death zone. This is a horrid death. What you're looking at is just horrid stuff. By the way, Archaeopteryx, the poster boy for evolution, essentially every Archaeopteryx fossil is doing the same thing. Every one of them arching back. And these are birds, but it's, they're crow-sized birds. They're not dinosaur-sized birds. They're just little crow-sized birds. But every one of them is arching back, gasping for air. Every one of them. How many is everyone? That's all of them. I mean, there's a trend here, I guess. Here's another one. They're all doing this. There's only been about 8 of these things found. And they're all doing this. All that are complete enough to know. There's another one. He's doing it. And, there's just a lot of these. I can't even say this guy's name. Sinosauropteryx. He's doing the same thing. And there's Microraptor. He's doing the same thing. And there's, that's different. But this death pose is the rule in the fossil record. This is the way dinosaurs fossils, when there's a carcass there, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a thing that was buried alive and died by drowning. Drowning, as up around. Man. I hope this not only gives you a feel for how creation is superior to evolution, but it also should give you a real appreciation for the horror that was Noah's flood. I mean, this was a kill episode. It was a death episode. This was a judgment of sin. And how much does God hate sin? He hates it this much. Oh, man. Creationists have a good message for the world. The world needs this message. Got it? Well, here's a fossil I want to show you. This is Sioux. This is the big T-Rex fossil named Sioux, found in, I think, North Dakota or South Dakota, but eventually purchased by the Chicago Field Museum and is on display in the main lobby of Chicago Field Museum. If you're ever up there, you got to go see it, because Sioux it was found 90% complete, which is really rare for dinosaurs. Usually it's much less than 90% of the bones, but they were able to reconstruct it and put it back together. But Sioux, and seeming like all the dinosaur fossils, died a horrible death. Let me tell you a little bit about Sioux. Sioux, found nearly complete, and by studying the bones, they were able to tell that she was at least 300 years old at the time of death. Well, reptiles, the large reptiles even the Galapagos sea turtles sometimes get 300 years old today. Reptiles and the crocodiles tend to be very old. The oldest crocodiles are very old, older than mammals, older than people for sure. And we know that before the flood, people lived 1,000 years. So maybe some of these reptiles were very old too. But Sioux was at least 300 years old. It's hard to tell. I mean, she was quite old. But she lived in horrid pain. She lived a miserable existence. We know that because she had wounds in her jaw. Another T-Rex had chomped on her head, and actually, this is the pattern of T-Rex teeth here. Holes in her jaw by another T-Rex and punctured her jaw. She survived that because we can see where it healed up around the puncture wounds, but they had abscessed. And have you ever had an abscessed tooth? Ooh. She had many abscesses in her jaw. She could probably hardly chew. Oh man, that just gives me the willies just thinking about it. But it gets worse. Another fight, she'd had several of her ribs had been broken. These are the ribs, and this is where where the bone built up around it. They hadn't been set, but they had set themselves and grown around themselves. These are the broken bones here, and just every breath was like a knife stabbing her in the lungs. I mean, this is her life, however long she lived after these fights. And worse than that, she had her femur, her thigh bone had been broken. And you can see where that grew back and healed. I mean, she survived these attacks, but it wasn't much of a life. She lived a horrible life. And, she couldn't put much weight on this thing. How could she get food? How could she eat? How could she breathe? I mean, she was just, but she died in the flood. Didn't die of the wounds. She died and was buried in the flood. I wonder the Bible says that after God created all the animals and man, he called it very good. This could not have predated day 6. I mean, this was not millions of years ago, because God says even the dinosaurs, even Sioux was at that point very good. I think a better understanding that this was due to Adam's sin, and that Adam's sin ruined everything. Now, dinosaurs don't sin. Dinosaurs don't sin, but Adam sinned, and Adam ruined all of God's very good creation. And now the whole creation groans and travails in pain together until now. Well, I can see I'm going to be overtime. So get used to it. 95%, you know, that fossil column I was showing you, most of those are vertebrate fossils. But the real fossil record, 95% of all fossils are marine invertebrates, primarily shellfish, like clams. I mean, it's just clams. There's clams. There's a lot of clams, but no mammals. But that column shows vertebrates, dinosaurs, amphibians, mammals. It's a lie. It's just not the way the fossil record is. It's a statement of evolutionary propaganda. Of the 5% that's left, most of those are plants. Of the little tiny bit that's left, well, that's fish. And of the little tiny bit that's left, that's insects. And of the little teensy bit that's left is all of the land vertebrates all put together, the dinosaurs, the mammals, everything all put together. And it's just even a tiny fraction of 1%. And most of those are just a piece of one bone. And there's another thing about the real fossils record. The marine fossils, the ocean fossils, are all found on the continents. They're found in Kansas. They're not found in the Pacific. Does that tell you that something different was going on in the past? The fossil record doesn't look like evolution. It looks like somebody very angry with what's going on the continents picked up the ocean and destroyed the continents, and we have that record. That's what it looks like. Did you ever hear that before? Yeah, you read about it in Scripture, don't you? Here's a marine fossil. I like this fossil. This was found, this is an ammonite. You crack it open and inside is an ammonite. It was found on Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world, 29,000 feet. Marine fossils up on top. This was not found at the top, but it was most of the way up. Right at the top, I'm told, are clam fossils. Now, I'm not saying that the flood washed over Mount Everest. All those sediments were laid down at the bottom of the flood ocean, but then buckled up into the flood. These ocean bottom sediments. But there's the evidence. The oceans were at what are now high elevations. Oh, I got several more fossils to show you. Will you put up with me a couple more minutes? These layers are thought to represent tens of millions of years in length, all of them. This is a column of time. So this is 50 million years, that's 30 million years, that's 10 million years. But sometimes there's one fossil that actually transgresses several of those layers. It's called a polystrate fossil. And one fossil goes through several layers, through many millions of years of time, so they say. There's a better way to look at it. There's a better way to look at it. And it's not the evolutionary.
Right, there's another one there, people, if you heard that at all. Basically, a polystrate fossil is a tree that has fell down and has been fossilized. But what's quite surprising about it is that it's kind of gone through lots and lots of layers of rock sedimentation. Now, that had to be done rapidly, very quickly. And I'll tell you the reason why this is, because if you leave a tree hanging around for any more than 10 years or so, it's going to crumble away. It can't wait for it to be buried. It can't wait for millions of years for it to be buried and to fossilize. So therefore, to me, I mean, I made a video about this just last week sometime. I was over a local park where a tree came down. It's been down about 4 or 5 years, and I could literally just pick it up, pick parts of it out, and it would just crumble in my hand. It would just crumble in my hand, turn to mud or dust. So therefore, you know, it's obvious that it had to have been, for anything to fossilize, it has to fossilize quickly. You know, it has to be buried quickly in rock layers, and it simply can't hang around for millions of years for it to be waiting to be buried, because it's all going to blow away. It's pretty obvious, really, when you just think about it through logical thinking.
Time scale. Sometimes there are anomalous fossils. Well, that's a human artifact. You know where that was found? That was found in a layer of coal in Oklahoma, thought to be about 300 million years old. What's a human artifact doing in coal?
I'd like to see, you can see that, I'd like to see that some people explain that away, a human artifact in coal. I mean, coal is supposed to take millions of years for it to form. But there you got a human artifact buried in coal, in a coal layer.
Guys, this is a wonderful time to be a Bible-believing Christian. Got it? Here's another one. Oh, 200 million years old. Here's one of my favorite ones. This is a bronze bell. Still rings. Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. It's found in 300 million year old coal. There
you go. A bronze bell. Probably, let's just say, for instance, it's 200 years old. Probably less than that. And it's found in 300 million year coal. How does that happen? You know, it's wedged in between a big clump of coal. It's formed around it. It's obvious what's happened here. Coal doesn't take long to form at all. You can do it in a day in a lab. And in the real field, under certain conditions, it can be done in years.
Pennsylvania.
Excuse me.
Here's an interesting fossil. It comes from the state of Washington. It's a piece of petrified wood. Petrified wood, there's a lot of petrified wood, no big deal. But this is a petrified fence post. A farmer put a fence out in his field, and the part of the fence post that was underground, petrified, with above ground, it rotted away. But now he found this one, and then he found these stub fence posts along the fence line. It doesn't take millions of years to petrify wood, like I was taught. This is, you know, a human artifact. This is a split rail fence post. Here's an interesting fossil. It's found out in Texas, where evidently some cowboy was murdered and they buried his body off the side of the road. He was murdered around 1950 because this kind of boot was made around 1950. But when they were widening the road or something, they found this guy in there. But as they dug him up, they found that, well, the boot was still there. It was treated leather, and so it was leather, but the leg had petrified, or it had calcified. We call this guy the limestone cowboy. Well, let me summarize. The main points of my book, The Fossil Record, which are, you know, some of these points I've covered here tonight. The main points is that the fossils show sudden appearance of each basic type. It doesn't show gradual transition of one type into another. And then once those types get here, they show stasis. It shows complexity at the start. Evolution says it starts simple and goes complex, but no, it was complex at the start. The fossil record does show extinction, but extinction is the opposite of evolution. There's no ancestor-descendant relationship in the fossils. I make a point in the book that the fossil record is essentially complete. In fact, it looks like almost everything that was alive before the flood essentially got fossilized. I mean, we still have it. It was a complete world zone that we have. And by the way, in the lowest level down here at the bottom, the Cambrian explosion, all of the phyla, all of the basic body styles are there at the start, at the bottom of the Cambrian period. All of the fossils are there, right there.
That would prove, if all the phyla are there straight away, right at the bottom, it would pretty much prove that there was creation right at the start, as we have said, what the Bible talks to us about. Whether you want to take this on board or not is entirely up to you. I myself have now come over to the belief that this is probably the case. It's the case that energy and matter cannot be created by any natural mechanism, because there isn't one. That's what the first law would indicate to us. We don't know the origins of life itself. We did think it was amino acids. They can't organize themselves into a polypeptide to create proteins. That was demonstrated, a 1953 milli experiment. They did produce some amino acids, but they have not got the ability to organize themselves into a polypeptide. And also, going on from that, evidence for evolution. For evolution to occur, you've got to get life, guys. You've got to get life. And seriously, life cannot arise from non-life. It has to be extrinsic. There's information within life. There's information within cells. And the only way that information can get there is by an information giver. There's no other way of putting that. So to me, I've now gone back to creationism. Doesn't make me a bad person, because I don't agree with what atheists, think is their truth. This is my truth. I'm happy with my truth. Dave is happy with his truth. And what truth we have, it sits very well with us. It gives us hope in a world which seems to be spiraling out of control. And we hate it. We hate the way life is. And we all hope for better times. And that's what we have. We have a hope. We have a hope for better times. Times after this particular age, when this age is over and done with. Because I think things are generally, to me, in my worldview, things seem to be getting to the point now where it's getting pretty desperate in lots of places in the world. And I've almost given up on listening to the news because it's so bloody depressing. I can't get much good news out of the news these days. When you see people coming off of boats half dead and children suffering, I can't take that. The way I am as a person, I find it very difficult. It upsets me. It upsets me. And I'm more or less powerless to do anything about it. Only thing which I can do is to try and give people out there hope and understanding. That's all. If that makes me a bad person, then I'm sorry if it makes me a bad person. But it's what makes me. It makes it feel as if I'm doing something for the good. If I can give some people hope, that is my goal on YouTube. I don't care about the subs. I don't care about the channel views. I have a banter with people out there, with Mark Benoit and some other people as well, and Mike B. And I have a bit of banter with them. It's such a sad world if we can't laugh at one another once in a while. We need to just chill out sometimes and step back, and people become less serious. Just listen to a bit more of this. You haven't got too much further to go.
Start. Even vertebrates are there at the Cambrian explosion. And you and I are vertebrates. We're a special category of bony fish, remember? Vertebrates are there at the bottom, and every basic category of everything Where is the evolution? The evolution is, well, it's just a fig Newton in their imagination. Many fossils are found throughout the column. There's clams found in every one of those layers, and there's clams alive today. Where is the evolution? Most fossils are marine invertebrates, and these fossils died catastrophically and violently, and there's no complete ecosystem that we find in any fossil deposit. It's a shamble that they can't reconstruct habits from looking at the fossils, looking at bits of dead ones. Mixed habitats, these fossils, marine fossils found mostly on the continents. Well, all of these points documented in the book, and we've talked about half of them here this evening. But the fossils give strong evidence for the biblical story. But if Noah's flood was involved, and if the flood happened the way the Bible says it happened, if it was worldwide and mountain covering, then it would have deposited the world's fossil-bearing rock. You couldn't keep that kind of flood from depositing fossil-bearing rock. That's what that flood would do. And if it laid down the fossils, those fossils which are used by evolutionists to prove evolution, but if the flood really did it, then they're wrong and they have no evidence left. If you take the fossils away, they got nothing. They got nothing. We win in a no-hitter. I'm convinced evolution is a religion, the religion of naturalism. Darwin is its saint. Evolution is a religion. And
saying evolution, see that, guys? Evolution is a religion. They do teach it religion. There's a difference faith and religion. Faith is believing in things which obviously we can't prove. If we could prove these things, then basically faith would be redundant. That's the reason why they call it faith, you know. And people ask me, you know, where is your evidence for God? Where is your evidence for this, that, and the other? Well, basically, there is no evidence for God. If there was, it would not become a faith. Excuse me. And again, you know, evolution is faith-based. It's a faith-based understanding, ideology, theory, theology, theorem, whatever you want to call it. Because first and foremost, you got it. When you go right back to the start of things, you know, there is no evidence for the things which the atheist believes in. They believe that, you know, everything, nothing went bang and formed everything. You know, they believe that life somehow spontaneously came out of a primordial soup with the first eukaryotic microorganism. There's no evidence for any of these. You know, in actual fact, what science tells us that is that, actual fact, you need extrinsic information to actually create life itself. You know, it's obvious. I mean, can a computer create itself? If you were to leave one cell, you know, on some sand or whatever, like, you know, could it evolve into anything else? It would simply die. That's what the second law of thermodynamics is talking about. Everything is going to be running downhill. You know, it's going from a useful state into a useless state. That's what entropy is about. It's all running down. It's not helping us. And, you know, also there's no evidence for the transitional forms. It's just a bit more.
they worship the creation more than the creator, who's blessed forever. Well, we've covered a lot of ground, and I've gone over time, as is always the case, says my wife. But we started a little late too.
Right. I'll just put my 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, here we are again. 1, 2, 1, 2. Ah, good. Right, back with you again now. Right, so as you saw there, that was a chat with a PhD. You know, so you've got to try and it appears that all what's going on at the moment on YouTube is us and them. I've tried both sides. I've tried both sides of the coin. I've tried the funny creation side, which upsets the atheists, and then I lost my faith, supposedly lost my faith, which I didn't really lose my faith. I was just really pissed off a few years ago because of an incident. Then I tried to walk away from my faith, but it's that old scenario: once you're in God's hands, He won't let you go. And I did come back, you know, to faith, and I tried to calm it down a little bit, and go along with the. I tried to go along with the old Earth scenario and the evolution thing as well. Just move across there slightly. There you go. But it doesn't sit right. And if you're a seeker of truth, and then you have to accept the truth, no matter what form it is, what it turns up. And it appears that what science we actually have, it does not fit the scenario of evolution. I mean, there's so many gaps there. To be an atheist, you've got to accept that somehow there's a mechanism out there to create the universe. There simply isn't one. Then we've got to try and accept that there's some mechanism out there which is unseen, which created life. We still haven't worked out how life actually started on planet Earth. So we've got to try and think, well, you know, the God of the gap is there. Well, we don't know just yet, but sometime in the future we will know. I'm sure if there was a scenario there, if this did happen, we'd have known by now, but we haven't got the answer to that one yet. So again, you know, the atheist is on very, you know, it's on thin ice, it's on very dodgy ground. And then you come up to, you know, eukaryotic microorganisms. How did that actually get there? How did it evolve? Where are the transitional fossils? You know, there's so many other questions regarding evolution, and it just simply doesn't seem to be the case. A far better way to understand our existence on Earth, in the universe, is that there is an almighty creator out there who is almighty, who is all-powerful, who has the ability to create the energy and matter in the first place. How did he do this? I have no idea how it is. But we know that there must be some creator out there, because what the first law of thermodynamics is telling us. It tells us that there is no natural mechanism out there to create any matter, the energy to create the universe. So therefore it has to be something supernatural. And life cannot create itself. Therefore, it needs a creator. And if God is the creator, then we can see that he has created us in a specific way that evolution is not plausible. It's not even plausible. It fits man's ideas of how we got there without God, because we can't see God, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Okay. But, you know, it's all about people's pride. It's all about us and them. I've tried this side. I've tried the atheist side. I wasn't comfortable. I'm now just going to be me. I'm a creationist. Somehow that makes me the enemy of atheists, I guess. I don't know how that exactly works, because I'm my blood's the same color as them. I breathe the same air and everything else, drink the same water or whatever. But somehow that kind of just makes me an enemy. But you know, I have to come out in support of, change the subject slightly again. I've got to come out and support my friend David, because he's been a gentleman to me. I know David, and the people who've been on Dave's back, dodgy Dave's back supposedly, they don't know him the way I do. It's like a personal relationship with God and Christ. They don't know Christ the way myself does, the way Bill does, the way David does, Dave Weiser, and lots of other people on the internet as well. Now you can come out and you can call me all different kinds of names. You know, I've been whilst that video's been playing, I've been looking on my phone some of the time, and I've seen quite a few really quite nasty, very childish comments on the video, which I can't be bothered to answer, to be honest. I'll talk to Bill. I'll talk to some of my theist friends, because they understand me, because they were once probably in unbelief, but they've had their revelation and they've accepted it. That is basically how it works. So I'm not really interested in getting into slagging match. I don't mind a bit of banter from you know, time to time, but when it gets into serious name calling and stuff like that, that's when I kind of call it a day. You know, I want to be people's friends. You know, we do live in a pretty shit world at the moment, to be honest. It seems like it's kind of going out of control. But we need people here to give other people hope. That is the task which I've been given on YouTube. I'm not out here to, you know, to make any kind of money or anything like that. You know, they were talking about Patreon, I think it was. JD Kane's on Patreon earning $3 a video or whatever it was. I don't know. Doesn't interest me whatsoever. I'm basically on here just to give people understanding and give people hope, because the world needs hope. You know, you're not just a pile of cells waiting to die, you know, and then that's it for you. There is something other than this. You go on, there is going to be some kind of a judgment. This is just a test down here. It's a test. The test is, can you handle your pride? Are you willing to drop your pride? Are you willing to get rid of your pride and to try and accept the other side? As I said, it doesn't happen very often on YouTube. There's always that militant, hard, right-wing, atheist type of people who like to troll the internet and to see a theist who's kind of talking about creationism, and that's their target. That's it. You go on then like a flies to shit, basically, and that's it. You know, like a rabbit. Want to tear that person apart, and all which me and David's done is just trying to give you people hope out there. But it's accepted in other places. I get, when I talk to people in real life, face to face, I don't go and evangelize. I'm not that kind of a person. I'm not like Bill, who goes to Colchester. Kudos to Bill. He's a lovely guy. I wish I had the balls which he has. He knows the Bible really, really well. Kudos to him. It takes a person, to be honest, for someone to go into a public place and to preach the gospel when the world doesn't want to know the gospel, it takes a lot to do that. It really does take a lot to do that. And it used to be quite a common thing years ago. We used to go into town. I remember as a young lad going into Swindon, and you walk around the town. It's typical of any place in the UK, really. There would always be one or two people there preaching the gospel. I could go into Swindon now, and there's hardly anyone there preaching the gospel. You know, it's as if they've all been brainwashed into this understanding that we have evolved, therefore God is not. You know. But kudos to Bill for doing that, and anyone else who does do that, Jason Burns as well. I think he's got more guts and gumption than most of the people out there on the internet, to be perfectly truthful. He's had so much hate thrown at him. Okay, he's not the perfect person, you know. He kind of has said some pretty dumb things, you know. But to attack the guy the way people have gone after him, you know, and I was one included as well in that. So, you know, I feel pretty bad about what I did, and I've taken my videos down now because I know that it's not the right thing to do. So I left that alone. But all we want to do on the internet is to give an account of our faith, to be genuine about ourselves, and if you can't accept us for who we are, because you're never ever going to get rid of religion, you're never ever going to get rid of faith. It's here to stay. You've got to learn to deal with it, right? It's when you go on the attack, that's when you push people into extremism. You shove people into a corner. Exactly what's happened to the Muslim people. They've been ostracized, or whatever, like, been pushed in, been labeled, and then you get extremism. And it's kind of what happened to me in a little bit of the way. I made some videos a few weeks ago. People got rather upset about that, which I was kind of disappointed with. And I kind of knee-jerk reaction, went back into where I came from, which I didn't really want to go to. But whilst I'm here, I suppose it fits the science, put it that way. I'm much happier with it because, to be honest, when I accepted evolution, it didn't sit right with me. It didn't sit right with me, you know. Although it's not the most important thing going on, my faith is more important. Anyway, people, I've got to get up in the morning. I've got to go to London. God, I've got to go to London tomorrow. Oh, Monday morning, I've got to go to central London, pick up to bring back. And then I got to drop that one off, and I got to go straight back down to London again to pick up another one. Oh dear, here you go. That's work for you, I suppose. That's life. So I think that's all I need to say, really. Just like to say to the atheist community out there, especially Wayne Hudson and Marco Noya, just leave off Dave. Try and understand. Please go down to Kent the Bastion if you can. Don't mock something which you don't know about, you know. But that aside, more importantly, don't mock Dave. Dave's a gentleman. I know David, and I can tell you through first-hand experience that he's a diamond geezer. He's a very nice man, and it's just a shame that you've kind of burnt your bridges with him, because that's what you've done. You've burnt your bridges with him, which is a shame, really, because he can be your best mate and he can also be your worst enemy. All right, so just bear that one in mind. I don't know if I should say this, but regarding right, okay, got to think about this for a minute. I've got to think this through. How's this going to work? David witnessed what he witnessed back in 2009, and all the people that mocked David and what he'd seen are no longer with us. I used to watch Revelation TV quite a lot. It's a Christian program on Sky TV, channel 581. And there was a producer on there called Doug Harris. Unfortunately, Doug Harris died of cancer about 4 years ago now, I think it was. And David was going to go on Revelation TV and give his testimony about what he saw in the Bastion. The actual person who owns Revelation TV, the actual Christian program, is a guy called Howard Condor. Now, Howard Condor was on the phone for David for 2 hours talking about his experience, and Howard said, look, we got to get you on the program. I know Howard. I spoke to Howard. I've emailed Howard several times. I could have gone over to Spain and had a holiday with him, but other things have gone on. That was a few years ago now. Haven't spoken to him for a couple of years. But the conversation kind of went on, and Howard said to David, okay, we're going to get you on the program. I'll hand you over to Doug, which is like the program producer. And then you can have a chat with him and arrange stuff. And David then spoke to Doug and basically mocked David of what he saw. Within a year, within 8 months, I think Doug Harris had died of cancer. This is not the only incident of this kind which has happened. It seems like every person that has mocked David, that person is no longer around. So I should be very careful what you say about David and his experiences. There's stuff out there which we don't know about. Believe you me, we do not fight against flesh and blood. We fight against principalities and powers of the air. That's who we fight against. I don't fight against you atheists out there, although it seems like from your comments that you're very aggressive towards me. And I wouldn't have said that I was very aggressive towards you. I may have provoked you a little bit, just jokingly, because I know how to antagonize you. I know what buttons to press. But that's not ultimately what I'm on here for. That's just a little bit of banter, which unfortunately gets blown out of all proportions. But there you go. But yeah. Anyway, David, I hope you feel vindicated. I'm firmly on your side. It's just a shame that these people don't understand and know you the way I know you. You've helped me out a great deal in several ways, especially putting me up at night and feeding me and welcoming me as a stranger, and now we're a friend because of that. It's just a shame these people don't know you the way I do, David. And if they did, they would not mock you. In fact, if they had the revelations, the experience which I've had, they'll come out in full support of you. You're not dodgy Dave. You're my good friend, Dave. And I'd like to say the same for Mark Anoya. I'd like to say the same for Wayne Hudson. I'd like to say the same for Aaron Ra and Gluteus and Alex Botton and all the other people who might be, and Bert Sticks. I'd like to Andy Wells. I'd like to say I'd like to say the same thing to those people, that I like you as people, but I don't agree with what you believe in. But that doesn't make me your enemy. It just makes me slightly different. That's all. It doesn't make me a bad person or a crazy person to experience these things. It would make me a liar if I was to dismiss them and say they never happened. All right? But they did happen. And I have to be genuine. And I hope you understand that I am a genuine person, that I am a trustworthy person. I'm a very open person. And if something happened to me, I'll tell you about it. And I wouldn't tell you lies, because they're not lies. What I experienced, I can't explain. I don't know how it happened or where it came from. What David experienced, he himself tells me every time I speak to him, but why me? Why has this happened to me? I think because he's a seeker. It's a person who was truly looking for it, right? And there's people out there who mock, and they're never going to find the truth if you mock. It's simply going to just go over your head. It's going to avoid you. It will avoid you. The truth is out there for people, but you got to be open-minded. That's what I'm saying. And I was a very open-minded person. That's just my nature. That's the way I am. And if you're an open-minded person, then if God is there, he will reveal himself to you. But you've got to be open-minded. And unfortunately, I see people on the internet which are so close-minded. They really are. They're never, ever going to get it. They're going to be forever searching, adding. That's what these people are, unfortunately. And all we try to do in our videos, myself, David, Bill, and some of the others, Dave Weiser, is just try and give you people a little bit of truth, because we've been there, we've experienced these things, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of hope, because the world without hope is a pretty hopeless place. Anyway, people, I think it's a good time to leave it there right now. Hope you enjoyed the hangout, a little video. I'm going to try and do some more videos as well. Perhaps I'll touch on the supernatural near-death experience side. Again, this is something which my father himself experienced as a young lad. If it wasn't for my father, getting through that, I wouldn't be here today, funnily enough. But yeah, he died at the age of about 15 years of age, momentarily, and he had this. It's the same thing which you get with NDEs, near-death experiences. It's that you go down this tunnel, this white light, the white tunnel, and my dad experienced that. And he told me this when I was quite a young person, in my early teens, I think. And it's interesting, isn't it? Is there life after death? Is there not life after death? I believe I have pretty good knowledge that there is something else after we die. Now, I think the best we can come up with, if you don't have a revelation from God, is near-death experiences. These can be scientifically verified that this is the case. And I'm gonna show you a video the next day or so. Might be able to do it tomorrow, actually. If I'm, no, actually, I've got a stupid day tomorrow. I've got 2 Londons and I've got to be up at 1 o'clock in the morning to take down to Gatwick Airport. And that's on my birthday as well. So I've got a really, really long day tomorrow. But we can look into near-death experiences of a supernatural nature. Is it the case, or is it basically just people putting a fast warm-up to try and sell a book, or do they have some kind of a chemical shutdown in their brain to try and make the actual experience of death a lot less painful or plausible or whatever? Anyway, people, that's it from me. I'm going to be going to bed now because I've got to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go and do my London work. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.